Good evening and welcome to Hudson Valley Week in Review, where we look back at the people, places, and issues making news in Ulster County and the region. I'm Amy Greene. We begin tonight with an ongoing effort by authorities in Ulster County cracking down on parents who owe child support. Between October 1st and December 31st, detectives with the Ulster County Sheriff's Department, the DA's office, and the Department of Social Services Child Support Enforcement Unit say they've arrested 6 people in connection to non-payment of child support. The defendants owe anywhere between $500 and $68,000. Detective Sergeant Abram Markowitz recently spoke with us about the agency's ongoing effort to track down child support offenders.
About 2 years ago, a little less than 2 years ago, we started noticing some of the warrants that we had for child support were for people that were some were in this area and some were just outside this area and some were very far away. And we were receiving some calls about one case in particular as to why were we not going to get this person. We knew exactly where he was and so forth. And the problem was, at the time, the way the warrant was for him, it was a family court warrant and not a criminal court warrant, and there were some concerns about whether or not we can go out of state and some other potential legal issues. So I got thinking about it, and I spoke some with our warrant custodian, Deputy Tiano, and we decided it would be worthwhile to get a meeting together of representatives from the different agencies within the county that are involved in the child support process. Support Collection Enforcement Unit from DSS, the District Attorney's Office, Family Court, DSS Legal, and from the Sheriff's Office. So we had a couple of meetings, and we decided to get everybody talking to one another, because a lot of people didn't even know who their counterpart was in the other agency. So once we established that, we started to come up with a plan as to how we could start enforcing and getting some of these people that we knew exactly where they were, but they were just a little further away than ordinarily most agencies would go to get them. So one case in particular, the case that kind of really started this thing going, was a gentleman out of, he was in South Carolina on the Georgia border, and we were able to get a criminal warrant for him, and by doing that, we were able to extradite him from down there. We did things to minimize costs and so forth. People did in lieu of overtime, in lieu of flying, we drove and things like that. So we were able to go get him. And once we did that, we discovered that it was logistically, it was just not as hard as it might have seemed at the onset to start enforcing these even out of state. So we made it a priority to get what we call the low-hanging fruit, the first couple rounds of people who were maybe inside of New York or maybe a surrounding state, and we started getting those people and bringing them in. We also felt it was very important to publicize that by way of our press releases, to show that just because you go to the next state over doesn't mean we won't come necessarily, we won't come get you. And that's what we started doing. So we've pretty much, I think, if I remember correctly, in 2013 there was something like 75 plus or minus warrants specifically for child support, and we've definitely whittled that down since then. Obviously some get canceled, new ones come in, but our uniform patrols have been very helpful in, if a new one comes out, we find out where the person is, we go execute that. So generally the turnaround time on those now is pretty low. We still have the challenge of the people who have gone very far away. I'll use Florida as an example. We are working on a plan to arrange for funding that will not cost taxpayers not another penny, but using existing funds to be able to finance so that we can go further out than our current reach and get those people that have gone that far away. Florida is really the prime example, because most of the ones that are still out there are, a big percentage of them are down in Florida. So the district attorney's office has an assistant district attorney assigned just to be the liaison between us, the court, and through criminal court and through family court. And what we generally will do is, where she does a lot of that work, is if we have, for example, somebody who's wanted for child support out of Ulster County Family Court, but there's a reason we want to get a criminal court warrant for the criminal act of non-support of a child. A few years ago, that was made a misdemeanor in the state of New York. So if we have, the most common example would be is if we have somebody who already has a family court warrant, and let's say for one possible example would be is if they're out of state and we want to go get them and they're close enough that we'd be able to go get them, we will then utilize that assistant district attorney to go through the criminal court system, usually in the town of Ulster, to obtain a criminal court warrant, which then facilitates us going out of state to bring that person back. And then also, once that person is back, even if they resolve their family court case, there is now an additional criminal action in the town of Ulster court for that particular charge. That's primarily how that assistant district attorney functions in our group for this particular purpose. Usually, it's actually not hard at all. More often than not, we know, if not precisely where they are, we know fairly well where they are. The issue that we have found with child support enforcement when we deal with the child support warrants, unlike other types of warrants, is it's not uncommon that the person is not trying to hide. A lot of times, and this is what I was talking about with this low-hanging fruit in the first couple of rounds of sweeps we would do, it's not that we don't know where the person is. The person would figure they just went far enough away that we wouldn't come get them. Just to note, a family court warrant is valid on its face anywhere in the state of New York. So it's not uncommon that somebody, let's say, if they're from this area and they owe whatever they owe, and we've had this in several cases where maybe they went to Pennsylvania or they went to Connecticut. So they're an hour away, but they've crossed a state line. And historically speaking, there would be no activity, there would be no attempt to enforce a family court warrant across a state line. And that was one of the things we decided there was no reason we couldn't do that. And that's where that assistant district attorney came into play by obtaining the criminal court warrant, whereby we would do the extradition process. So yeah, more often than not, we know exactly where they are. I don't know if I'll go so far as to say they're hiding in plain sight, but the issue is not hiding, it's putting distance. And in some cases, these people put what they thought was enough distance between us and them, and they turned out to be mistaken. Because we have gone to, I personally went with Deputy Tiano on that first case to the South Carolina-Georgia border, brought that gentleman back. He owed $160,000, something to that effect. We've gone to the state of North Carolina at least once. We've gone to Pennsylvania a couple of times. I believe we had a gentleman, we were about to go to Connecticut, and we had a gentleman who was there, actually came and surrendered himself here because he had heard about what we were doing and just said, well, he came in to surrender and wanted to take care of it on his terms rather than waiting for us to come and get him. Like I said, the next mission is Florida. That's where we have a large contingent of people that are down in Florida, and we would like to be able to go get them and bring them back and resolve the remaining bulk of these warrants. How big of a problem is it in Ulster County as opposed to other counties, as opposed to the nation? I don't know. Certainly when we have warrants that are outstanding in this agency, and I'm sure other police agencies are in the same boat, no police agency wants to have warrants sitting in their drawer not being acted on. We have been fortunate enough that we were able to bring the right people together, to get the right people talking to one another, to lower that number. I know that some other agencies have, in the last year or two, have reached out to us, have reached out to some of the other representatives on our informal committee to ask us, hey, how are you guys doing this? Because we want to start doing that. And some of the other agencies in this area have done that. And I think they're meeting with, if they have done that and if they've done what we've been doing, they have probably met with success as well. That's a great question. And that actually speaks to that we have representatives from all the different pieces here. Certainly the sheriff's office is not part of the actual enforcement piece of it. We are simply the people, when the warrant comes to us, the warrant says, go get this person. That's our job to go get that person and bring them before the court. Once that's done, effectively speaking, we as the sheriff's office are out of that equation. Then the process then flips to whether it's the support collections people or the family court people or the DSS people to do what they need to do to compel payment. I know there are mechanisms in place, but again, whether it's wage garnishments or, like you said, if they're not working, those are not issues that are dealt with specifically by the sheriff's office. We deal specifically with the warrant is to go get person X. That's our job, to go find person X, bring them before the court. Sure, absolutely. It's certainly not proportionally speaking, it's a small proportion, but it does happen. Just in our very last round of arrests that we announced for the last quarter, there were 2 warrants that were vacated. One of them was for a woman. It's less common, but it does happen. And truthfully, it doesn't matter to us who the warrant's for. The warrant says, go get this guy, we go get that guy. If the warrant says, go get this girl, we go get that person. Because that's our mission, is to execute the warrants and to bring that person before the court.
When we return, we'll take a look at a potential deal between Westchester Medical Center and Kingston-based Health Alliance of the Hudson Valley. And later, part 2 of our conversation with Ulster County Executive Michael Hine. We'll be right back.